Okay, it's Wellbeing Wednesday. It's our hour of the week when we talk about our health and trying to improve it. And I like to introduce you from time to time to interesting people who can talk about, well, maximising everything we can. Our guest today is someone who is what's called a performance coach. So he started out in sport, but actually it's branched out to lots of different things. And he says he can maximise your performance in business as well as sports, performing arts, home life and beyond. So I thought, right, let's find out more about this. His new book is called The Optimal Performance Formula, and it's #1 bestseller in what's called performance psychology. Ooh, we're going to end up so much better off at the end of this hour. I feel it already. So let's say hello to Adolfo Gómez Sánchez. Adolfo, hello.
Hello, Chris. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so good they named you 3 times. Adolfo Gómez Sánchez, right?
Well, actually, the funny story behind this is my mother was a big fan of Gustavo Adolfo Bécquer, which is a famous Spanish writer. So my brother's name is Gustavo and mine is Adolfo, and then we just didn't have another brother, thankfully.
and you're Spanish, right?
Yes, I am. Although I've spent most of my life living and traveling abroad. But yes, actually from Murcia, a place I think you know well.
Oh, right. So we're going to say, hola, buenos dias, ¿qué tal? And all that kind of stuff. But we'll switch to English now. You are joining us live from a wonderful part of the world. Alicante is where you are.
Yes, sir.
Home of the paella, I think, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, we call it the Spanish California.
with good reason. Now, if only we could have that climate and some of the food and drink and the lifestyle. And oh yeah, I like a siesta. Adolfo, there's a lot to that, isn't there?
Well, science has shown people have gotten on the bandwagon of sort of micro naps and siestas. So it got a lot of bad rap in the past, but now people are starting to use it and recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a bit about yourself. You were initially a tennis pro, right?
Well, my life is actually kind of being the convergence of two different paths. So one of my persona was I was very active and competitive in sports. Yes, I did play tennis. Never got good enough, but I did play tennis and competed. I played American football, and I've been doing martial arts since I was a teenager. Went off to work to train in Japan, and so anything that was about improving myself and pushing myself to the limit always fascinated me. And then in parallel, I had this my academic route, and went off and I studied business, and then I studied something called organizational behavior. And I did my graduate degree at Yale. And that's where I discovered that everything that I had discovered in sport around performance actually had science behind it. And this was about 30 years ago. So I guess I'm revealing my age a bit. But I started to go down the rabbit hole and marry those two worlds. And that was my passion. And that's who I am now. So the question I've been trying to answer for 30 years is, why are there so many talented people, talented organizations that don't perform to their maximum potential? And there's a whole lot of reasons why that happens, and there's skills to get around that, which is what I've done, modeling from the science of sports, which is the ultimate pay-for-performance industry, but then taking it to other areas, including the world of business. So that's me. That's what I do, and that's my passion.
I wonder if it's the same in Spain. People have had a whole different idea about optimization since lockdown. People found out it's not just about working hard, and working for the man, as they say, and all the rest of it. They want 4-day weeks. They want working from home. They want more of a private life away from work. So they don't always want to actually get to the peak, right?
Well, yeah, I think what you're bringing up is a really fascinating thing, and it's come up a lot lately in sports and in business, which is around sort of mental well-being, right? Which is something we kind of ignored, right? You're a top competitor, you want to be a CEO, you want to be an Olympic athlete, so who cares? Tough it out. But I think people are understanding, that it's not about just achievement, it's about achievement with fulfillment, which is the really important part. And B, that it's not a short-term game, it's a long-term game. And this is one of the things that I talk about a lot, and it's in the book, is I think the mistake people do is they're trying to get short-term results. But if you look at the science on this, and it's really, really clear, any great achievement requires thousands and thousands of hours of what's called deliberate practice, right? Which is focused training. So you don't become a concert pianist in a month. You don't become a Premier League star in 6 months. Yet, if you look at the companies and you look at our expectations of ourselves, we expect to be proficient and great at things in 3 months, 6 months. So that creates a ridiculous amount of pressure and unrealistic expectations. So that's the first part. And the second part is, I think, one of the things we're really bad at as a society is challenging paradigms, right? So we have a series of beliefs that we basically inherit, and this frames the stories we tell ourselves about what's possible. And the example you cited about work, do you have to be there, or working off-site, having a work-life balance. We have stories that we swallowed for a long time, and I think people are challenging them and saying, hey, it doesn't have to be like that, and you can still be efficient. Look at myself. I don't live in a big city. I used to have that paradigm that I lived in, either Madrid or London. I had to live in some big place to be able to do the business I do. And yet here I am living in beautiful Alicante, and our business is thriving more than ever. So I think one of the things we teach people is to challenge those paradigms, because it's only when you do that you can then realize what's really possible.
Yeah, I read a fascinating book, I think it was last year, about this whole business of geniuses and how do people become great at what they do. And as a tennis coach, you'll know this. It's not just by accident. You aren't born with a tennis racket in your hand and become a genius. You have to practice, and whether that is Michael Jackson in music, or Mozart, or the Beatles, Lionel Messi in football, these guys and girls all practiced in order to be a so-called genius, didn't they? It didn't just happen overnight.
Absolutely. And actually, hours of practice have been shown to be of proper focus practice, because not any time of practice matters. And we can talk about that in a second. But hours of focused, deliberate practice correlate more to success than natural talent. And actually, talent at times is almost a handicap, right? Because you're used to things coming easily, right? And you don't have that work ethic. And so a lot of times, a lot of the people who had most success in any field are just the hardest workers, and then long term, that ends up paying off.
Yeah. Listen, I got a Sarah in the lovely city. Have you been to Ely ever, Adolfo?
No, I haven't.
You're missing out. You got all those wonders of food in Spain, but in Ely they have the eel. Have you ever eaten eel?
No, I haven't, actually. That's one of the few things I haven't tried.
You need to come to the Eel Festival. Anyway, Sarah's been in touch
will.
Yeah, Sarah says, what's the best way to start your day? How does Adolfo kick off his working day? Sarah goes on to say, this is on email, by the way, chris.mann@bbc.co.uk. Sometimes when she gets up late, she tends to eat worse and feels worse at work and kind of gets out of the rhythm. Funny enough, Sarah, I know what you mean, because today I didn't do my usual thing. I put my car in for service and wasn't where I was normally, and got to work late and all that kind of stuff. Not that late, boss, but a bit out of kilter. So I know exactly what you mean, Sarah. Thank you for that email. Your thoughts, please, on that, Adolfo.
I think one of the things that we have to learn is success is a very personal thing. And so routines are very personal. Now, I do believe you should have routines, but what they are is works for some people. Some people are much, just their biorhythms work much better in the morning, or they might work better at night. For me, one of the key things when I wake up is having a tiny little space to breathe and to focus. And that means no phones, no social media, no conversation, no TV. And at that point, I sort of just focus and say, so where do I want to go? And so have clear, what do I want to do today? Because a lot of times, in a micro level, it's during your day, but in a macro level, even in your life, you start going down a route, and then you realize you haven't actually consciously made a decision to do that. The inertia takes you. And that happened to me. When I got after my graduate degree, I started a company, I sold it, I stayed on, I was CEO of a company. And I remember, it was about 300 people, and I was going into my office, and I thought, wow, this is the dream. But it wasn't my dream. I was absolutely miserable. It was somebody else's dream.
Yeah.
It was my mother's dream. She was thrilled, right? But I thought it was her. So and that's the moment where I realized, what are the drivers that make me happy? So my comments to Sarah would be, find what it is that makes you happy, whether it's being innovative, being creative, whether it's doing exercise. What are the things that really set you off? And you will find the best way to do that is think of the activities that you most like. And if you list different activities, you find why you like them, and then you'll find there's a common thread. For me, it's being able to be creative, it's being able to express, it's having freedom to decide how and when I do things. So structure your morning where you've got a piece of that, right? Exercise for me is a discipline which just frees my mind, focuses me, right? So find something that sets you off, and it doesn't have to be, a cold shower or an ice bath, as is very popular now. It may work for you, but it doesn't have to.
Most definitely not. Adolfo, that is such a moment, realising that you're living the dream, but it's somebody else's dream. Just going to, before we go back to chatting about what's in the book, I want to bring you another, I just lost it for a second, another email from a listener. Catherine Soham says, my daughter's just about to leave for her first term at Manchester University. Well done to your daughter, Kath. She's anxious to the point of terrified at the enormous change that awaits her. Oh, I feel that. What advice do you have for someone who's just about to begin the next chapter of their life, leaving home and so on, in the crucial 3 years ahead, which may define what she does professionally? Quite an open question there. Thank you, Catherine Soham, for being in touch. Adolfo, what do you say?
Well, first of all, I think that's a great question. And I wish more people, when they're scared, facing a moment where they're scared, would actually reach out and ask for advice and help, because I guess a lot of people have been through it. So let me see. There's a couple of really valuable things I think your daughter has to keep in mind here, Catherine. One is what I call being a master of meaning. And what I mean by that is nothing in life has any significant meaning except the meaning you give it. And that's actually true if you think about it. So how you feel is a function of the meaning you give it. So she may be giving this a meaning that it's ominous. What if shit doesn't work out? And then she goes through all these terrible scenarios in her mind, but you are in control of that. So you can give it another meaning and say, I get the opportunity to do something that I've never done, that I'm not going to be good at the beginning, but I will definitely grow and it'll serve me. And this is something that I use with athletes all the time, because the meaning you give to things changes your physiology, changes the way you think, the way you feel. And so you need to be in control of that. Now, they never teach us to do that, but it's incredibly powerful. And one of the ways to do that is there's a fantastic book by Dr. Carol Dweck, which is about having a growth mindset. And so the difference between having a growth mindset and a fixed mindset is the following. And it's very applicable to this going to the university. When you face a challenge, if you have a fixed mindset, you believe your talent, your skills, and everything you can do is kind of fixed. It's given to you at birth. The problem with that is every challenge you face in life is then a test that you pass or fail, right? But that's actually not true. Science has shown we have neuroplasticity, and we can, in skills and in cognitive skills, our whole lives. That doesn't stop after you grow up. So growth mindset views any challenge as an opportunity to learn and grow. And then the meaning you give it, if you don't do well, is it's data. It's a learning experience. And then you can work that in and you can improve. And that's how athletes do it. As a matter of fact, athletes are world-class at seeking situations that take them out of their comfort zone, right? Whereas the rest of us in society, I hope I don't do this, but tend to go into this pattern where you get good enough at something and then you flatline. You stop improving. Great example of that, when we learn to drive, right? We all learn to drive. When we stop running over people and hitting lampposts, the rest of your life, you never think about how you can become a better driver. You just consolidate that level of driving. So what we need to do as human beings is to push ourselves out of that comfort zone and learn new things. And that's how we grow. And, I always say to people, get comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's what elite performers always do. And even when they become professional, they continue to strive to be better. Right. So I think that those are things that, and also, sorry, just one last thought.
Yep.
There's a great quote by Billie Jean King, and I think she should keep in mind, which is, pressure is a privilege. And what that means is, if you're in a pressure situation, a lot of people are competing, it's difficult, it means you're doing something really relevant and really ambitious. And that's great. That in and of itself is validation that you're doing something special, you've gotten somewhere. So you've earned the privilege to now have that pressure, right? So you need to see it positively, and enjoy it, because the outcome is a lot less important, and you can't control the outcome. You can only focus on what you do and how you can get better.
So we're
Sorry,
talking.
Chris, long answer.
Yeah, no, a really good answer. We're talking about performance psychology with our guest Adolfo Gómez Sánchez. If you've got a question, do text 81333 on the text. Start your message with the word CAM. Kev has done so. He says, I keep getting stuff coming up on my socials advocating getting up early and embracing the day. I think you need to cancel those socials, Kev. He says, can I 5 o'clock, as in 5 a.m., wake-up time really make a difference to your outlook? He says, the very idea makes me feel exhausted. That's Kev's question. So getting up early or not, Adolfo, what do you think?
So again, I think I alluded to it before. Each one has a different cycle. You need to find what works for you. I'm a much more of a night person, and I perform better at night. And I have gotten up at 5 to train, but I'm miserable doing it. What is more important, Cam, is that you make sure you do cover the fundamentals, which is a certain minimum hour of quality hours of sleep. Sleep is the least leveraged performance enhancer used today, even by professional athletes. And there's been an increase of sleep coaches who work with everyone from Cristiano Ronaldo, Roger Federer. They've all hired sleep coaches because as a society, we don't sleep enough. So make sure you get 8 hours uninterrupted sleep. And then your nutrition and your hydration are incredibly important.
What does a sleep coach do, Adolfo, for goodness sake? Do they sit by you and
helps
smooth your brow as you try and go to sleep or something, or read you a bedtime story? What's going on?
No, they figure out how your body, a particular body, and your particular biorhythms work, and they program the best sleep patterns for you. And sometimes I remember a case of Roger Federer was included a midday nap, but it's to give you the maximum recovery because the performance has a triangle, right? It's hard work, which we get. Then it's what I call nutrition, which is what do you put into your body and your mind. But then there's recovery, right? And that's what we forget about, right? And you need to recover. That's where the growth is happening. And that's where the improvement's happening. So it's actually become a science, and more athletes and executives have discovered that this makes them perform better. So it doesn't matter when you get those hours. Make sure it's just something that works with your formula, with your lifestyle, and with your personal, biorhythms.
The kind of things that sports people have been doing for a while now to maximize their performance are just as adaptable to us in our everyday lives and to businesses, right, Adolfo? How does it work? How do you apply this science of sports to companies? Tell us practically.
Well, that's a great question. Thank you, Chris. I mean, I always say when I meet usually a new CEO who's calling me in around performance, I would say, look, if your favorite sports club were managed the way you manage your business, you would be aghast. And there's a few examples that we can look at that, and it's really clear. So, for example, the concept of a manager versus a coach, right? If you see what a manager does, he'll come in and typically be, hey, Chris, you're not hitting your targets. You better smarten up or you're going to get fired. I'll be back in a month and see how you're doing. That's about it. Whereas if you transfer that to imagine a football club loses a game, head coach comes in and says, oh, you guys are all rubbish. You better smarten up, you get fired. I'll be back next Sunday for the next game. You would say, fire this guy. It's impossible, right? What does a coach do? He says, okay, why are we not winning? What do each of you need to improve? What do we need as a team? What skills are we missing? And Monday, this is the key, we start working on it together. So how different would it be if you engage with your employees if that were the focus of a manager? Hey, you're not hitting your targets. Do you need skills? Do you need support? Do you need training? Is it product problems? And Monday, let's work on it together. It's a totally different mindset. Another concept from sports. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry
to interrupt you, Adolfo. What I was going to say there is, what strikes me about that is the honesty of it. That sports people are prepared to say, oh yeah, no, this didn't quite work. We need to do this. There's just tactics and how they might change things. Perhaps people aren't quite as open to doing that, or haven't been in business or in their own lives.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's one of the things that we also have to learn. When I meet a new CEO, one of my first questions after they tell me all the struggles they have is, what is your personal plan to be a better CEO in the next 5 years? And they're like, what? And that's the whole point. If you look at the great performers, Kobe Bryant, Rafa Nadal, Tom Brady, take anybody from any sport, once they became famous and world class, they worked doubly hard, right? Plateaus are taboo in sports, right? Because you need to continuously be better, because that's what it's all about. And to do that, you need to look for feedback, be that data or being a mentor or whatever. And if you're not getting it, you're not going to be able to get better. Whereas in business, we've got this stupid taboo that if I get to a certain level, I have to have all the answers. And that really limits people. It limits them personally, and it limits their organizations.
One of the things I'm really interested in is motivation here. If you ask, there were surveys done of people who served in wars, soldiers at the front line, and it turned out that most of them, even in the Second World War, weren't fighting for their country or for a great cause. They were fighting for the people around them. The people in their own squad, in their own little group, right? That was what the survey showed when they asked them when they came home from war. And I wonder how much that affects your thinking on motivation. Do people do things? Is it for the money? Is it for promotion? Is it for praise or so on? Or is it because of their group and how important teamwork can be in our private lives and also in business?
Well, fortunately, there's a lot of science on this also. So what I'm going to say is not my brilliant insight, but it is very true, and it's been proven. High performance cultures are driven, generally, people, by three types of motivators, and they're all intrinsic, right? So the stick in the carrot, getting money, fine, that's great for a while, but that flatlines really fast. Once you've got your basic needs covered, people don't change jobs for 10% raise, right? What does move people and really motivates them is having something they're working for, some mission that unites them to the rest of the team, which is what you're talking about, Chris, right? We're all working for one thing, we're invested in it, and this is the most important thing, and we clearly know what it's all about. We all know what priority is. So that's why having a clear mission is so important in organizations, and often they forget about it. And I'll actually talk to leaders, which you'd be surprised, and they're not able to articulate their mission in a way that everybody in the organization can repeat it. So that's one. The second thing is play. So it's having a sense of ownership over what you do, right? Top performers want to decide how they do their work. They want to get their fingerprints on it, and they want to decide who they work with, which again is very much linked to what you were saying, right? They want to work with people they respect and who add value. And then the third thing is they want to do something where they feel they're growing, where the experience will improve themselves as human beings, right? I often say, and this is really true to athletes and to CEOs, the most valuable thing you will get out of any experience is not the medals, it's not the trophies, it's not the money, it's not the titles. It's who you become in the process of all those struggles. And looking back, I guarantee that that's true.
A lot of people will be thinking, okay, this might not apply to me in my life, but how do I make this happen for my kids? How do you bring up kids who are aspirational in the right way, not so that they, become monotone people who don't have a full life? That's increasingly important to people these days. But how do you teach your kids this stuff, to have those aspirations? You got a thought on that one, Adolfo?
Yeah, I think our entire system, starting from school and going to corporate world, is outdated. And it's all meant to funnel people into a predetermined preference system. And what happens is when you're a little different, and I don't mean that in any pejorative sense, you just have a different way of learning, of thinking, right? You don't find a way to fit in. Well, look at John Lennon. It's a good example. He tells a story when he was young. They asked him in school, what do you want to be? And he said, I want to be happy. And then they said, we think you didn't understand the assignment. And he said, I don't think you understand life. Right? But that's exactly right. And they didn't know what the hell to do with him. Right? Einstein, they thought he was retarded, right? Because while they were trying to explain him something big, he was thinking, what if I went to that light and came back before it turned off? Right? People have brilliant, this is the problem with being a visionary. And I think it was Picasso who said it. The problem with being a visionary is people don't get you until after you're dead, right? But that's where the system has to cater and give space for people to develop their own talents. Because we talk about intelligence as if it's one thing. But it's not. There's a whole bunch. There's like, I think the Harvard study was, there was 6 different types, right? There's spatial intelligence, emotional intelligence, there's that, mathematical, musical intelligence, right? And we need to find room for that because, there's a lot of talk about diversity, and I agree with that, and that's all fine. But the piece that people miss in the diversity discussion is cognitive diversity, right? They don't figure out how to have different points of view, different backgrounds, and different strengths. That's what makes you really rich.
Adolfo, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much. Adolfo Gómez Sánchez. His new book is the current #1 bestseller in performance psychology, The Optimal Performance Formula. I hope you all enjoyed that.